Everyone has already seen the clone effect, but the issue is as soon as the camera moves, the effect falls apart.
But that's where big movie sets fix this problem with motion control rigs. But unfortunately, even the cheapest of these rigs is way out of my budget.
And that's when Hohem sent me their new gimbal, and I had an idea. What if we use this gimbal as a motion control system?
So the concept in itself is very simple. We just lock the gimbal so it can only rotate on one axis, and then we set it to a rotation mode so it continuously rotates at the exact same speed, giving us that motion control. Then we just time and act each one of our takes and blend it all in post-production.
So let's take a look at what the final result can be.
This home has 2,200 square feet of total developed living space, and there's 4 beds and 3 full bathrooms. There's even a brand new deck with no neighbors behind you. And now this is a chef's kitchen with quartz countertops, a gas range, black lowers, white uppers, and a full-size pantry. And if you want to see the full listing details of this property, just comment "It's mine" down below. This home has 2,200 square feet.
And it's a seamless, perfect loop.
One quick thing I have to say about this effect is you don't need specifically the Hohem M7 gimbal to create this effect. It's a great gimbal. If you're looking for an iPhone gimbal, I highly recommend it. But if you already have a gimbal, so I have, let's say for my camera, I have the Ronin RS4 Pro. I was able to create this exact same effect with this gimbal. The only difference is to do the rotation with this gimbal, I just turned off the other axis. So I turned off the tilt and the rotate axis and just left only the pan axis alive. And then I used my phone as a controller and held to go right at a slow speed. And I was able to create the exact same effect with that gimbal. So if you have a different gimbal, you can use it with your camera, or if you have a different iPhone gimbal or phone gimbal, you can also use that to create this effect. But again, if you're in the market for a gimbal, I highly recommend the Hohem M7.
All right, so to start with the moving clone effect, what you're gonna obviously start, you're gonna put your tripod down, you're gonna set up your gimbal, make sure everything is balanced. Keep in mind that the tripod has to be placed on a firm spot, and it has to be a firm and sturdy tripod, because if the tripod is moving or shaking and shaking the gimbal, that's gonna show up in the footage and the effect won't work anymore. And then as for the iPhone settings itself, make sure that you're in the native camera app. I have tried this in different apps and I've tried filming at different frame rates, but iPhones don't always record at 60 FPS even when they say they do. So you actually wanna make sure that the video is obviously set to 4K, but then you wanna go down to 24 frames per second. This makes sure that you're never gonna drop any frames. And then also, of course, on the camera, make sure that you're locking focus and locking exposure, because if that's going up and down in between takes, you're masking and the clone effect is not gonna look good at all. One more thing to keep in mind is you gotta place a tripod and the gimbal camera right in the center of the room or somewhere close to center, because you want it to be able to fully capture each space of the house as it rotates around. And then lastly, one more setting that I forgot to mention is you have to turn on your grid, because the grid is what I'm gonna be using to make sure that the timing of each clone is in sync. Okay, and Curtis's first position that he's gonna start talking is right over here to the right. So I'm gonna make sure that the camera is facing to the left by actually a little ways, because when you turn on the rotation, it takes a little bit of a second to get up to full speed. Let's make sure we start the recording before we go. And then on the controller right here, you're gonna go into scenario, you're gonna go into rotation, and then clockwise right here, you're gonna rotate there. I have the speed set to 12, so that's a little bit slower.
Now let the gimbal do its rotation, step away, and cue the realtor to start talking once he's on frame. As he's talking, keep in mind where that grid lines up with your frame.
So honestly, the trickiest part of this effect for me was to get the timing of the sentences to line up perfectly. And what the grid let me do is when the realtor would deliver his line, as soon as he would finish delivering his line, I would check where the grid lines up with my view. And then when the rotation comes all the way back around again, then I would cue in my realtor as soon as that grid mark lined up with the same view again. And that way the realtor finishes his sentence, and as soon as he finishes his sentence, he can start his next sentence. Again, what that process looked like, he delivers his line, I check where the camera is lined up with when he finishes his line, he stays in position until the camera rotates away from him. Then the camera is just gonna do a full 360 loop, and then it's gonna come back around to him. But by the time it's come back around to him, you need to move him into his second position. So now in his second position, I would have my hands up something like this, to just say, hold, don't start talking yet. And then as soon as that grid line lined up with that
frame that I remembered earlier, I'd cue him to go and he'd start talking.
And then at the end of that line, same thing, I'd check where the grid is, see where it's lined up with the frame, and then remember that the camera's gonna do a full 360, and then he's gonna move into his next spot. And then again, I'm gonna make him wait until that grid lines up with the last frame that I remembered, and then I'm gonna say,
start your next line. Well, I'm not gonna say it, I'm just gonna signal it. And you're gonna do this to fill the entire loop of the footage. And ideally you have the realtor talking or your subject talking as much as possible, because if there's some empty pauses in there, it gets a little bit awkward and it sort of ruins the flow of the video. Once you're at your last location, it's sort of gonna end up right before your first location. So then in post-processing, we can actually make this video loop seamlessly. So I'm going to show you how to put this together inside of DaVinci Resolve, but obviously this concept translates to any editing software you might be using. DaVinci Resolve is super powerful and can handle this super easily, but other programs like Premiere or Final Cut, those types of things, they can probably make the same effect. You're just going to have to move some things around. All right, so your clip is going to be pretty long because obviously it's just a continuous loop of the footage. We have our waveform underneath. I'm just going to increase the volume a little bit so then I can clearly see when my subject is talking. To start, let's just find where our realtor says our first line, which is right over here. I'm going to scrub backwards until he's out of frame and delete that first section. Then I'm going to scrub forward just like so until he's out of frame again, somewhere around there. Cut the clip. Then I'm going to go scrub forward. So again, the camera is doing a full loop here. It's coming back all the way around. And now he's in his second location. I'm going to go back until he's not in frame, somewhere there. Delete that center section. Now I'm going to scrub forward until he's off of frame again, somewhere right there. Cut. And now I'm going to take this clip, and I know roughly that his sentences are supposed to end and then start a new sentence afterwards. So roughly that's where it should line up. Now I'm going to go into the top layer, so that top clip. I'm going to turn my opacity down to around 50. And it looks like we actually got a crazy close match ready, which is pretty lucky. But obviously you can see that there's some ghosting going on. So this top ghosting layer is this new clip we just added with the 50%. And then the bottom layer is that original clip. So now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in like crazy to our timeline because we want this to be perfect on the frame. Now, if we scrub forward and backward on our clip, we can make this line up perfectly. So I know that right there is perfect. Now there's no ghosting going on. And now if we play this back, the new clip shows up and he turns a little bit more transparent because obviously there's a layer on top of him. That's the opacity. But the actual clip itself is pretty much blended perfectly with the original clip. So that plays through. We have the second clip linked there. Just extend it to the same length of the first one for now and make sure that the speed is, or the opacity is set back up to 100%. Now we're going to take our next section of footage, do the exact same thing, find where he talks, scrub back a little ways. And it's good to add a little bit of a handle. So just to explain that, right here, he's just off of frame. You can see his elbow right there. I don't want to cut the clip right here. When I'm masking this and I don't have any extra footage to work with, that's just a pain. So go back a healthy amount somewhere there and cut the clip. Let's zoom out. Let's go forward until he's off of frame. So he walks with the camera a little ways. He's off of frame, and let's cut the clip. Now let's drag that onto track number 3. And then again, based off the audio tracks, I know he should be talking somewhere around there. Let's turn the opacity down to 50. And now you can see we're off by quite a bit more. This is usually what you're going to run into, but that is A-okay. I'm going to use this carpet line to line it up. So I'm going to go backwards, forwards, it looks like, until that blends perfectly again. I'm going to zoom in all the way on my timeline, go frame by frame. And it looks like that's the best frame to land on. So let's see how this looks here. If we turn the opacity off and on, you can see he's pretty much just teleporting location, but the frame is not changing at all. That is great. I'm just going to speed through this next section because the process is the same for each individual take. And now let's go to the next audio and layer it on top. Oh, and it looks like we actually did a retake for this scene. So the nice thing, because this camera is just rotating perfectly over and over again, if he messes up his line, we can just let the camera do one more loop and he can just try the line again. So that's what we did in this case, but for the sake of the tutorial, I don't need to replace this. We're just going to use it as is. Then I will use this last one because again, here he is doing a retake. So we did it once and then the camera rotates all the way around and we do it again. So let's go to that one. Let's go to a little bit before he shows up on frame. Let's delete all of that center there. Drag this over top, something just like so. Turn the opacity down. And it looks like these sentences are a little bit further apart. So we're going to have to drag this around quite a bit. you can see that I'm just moving this clip over and over until I can get that ghosting to go away. So right there, now the ghosting is gone frame by frame. That's the best frame to land on. He says his line over here, let's change the opacity back to 100%, and then loops on to the end. I'm just going to give it a bigger handle again so that we have some room to work with when we create the loop. There we go. And we don't necessarily need to worry about audio too much right now because we can always sync it afterwards. Let's just highlight all of our clips and just double check, make sure that our opacity is set back to 100%. You need to make sure that all of these clips are on a separate track, because if you create a new Fusion clip, and let's say this one, technically we could place it here as well. If that clip was there, that would now be the same media as this clip because it's on the same track. That's how Fusion works. So just make sure that it is on the right track right here. Now you're going to select all of your clips, right click and hit New Fusion Clip. Now let's head into the Fusion page. What you're going to be left with is this type of layout. You're going to be given a whole bunch of merges in a background, but we can just delete all of those, delete that background. We're going to take our media 1, which is track number 1. We're going to place it onto our pipeline right here. So he's talking, he's talking, he's talking. We're going to take our media 2. I'm going to open a second viewer here. So now this is our primary viewer. And now we can look at our media in 2 right here. So we can see that it starts right about there. So that's a good place to start with it. If it's turning black, that means that that's the start of the cut that we made back on the edit page. So let's add a polygon mask in empty space. It's easier to not have it connected right at the start here. So we're going to go to this frame that we started on. We're going to add sort of a square polygon mask beside the frame. And then once the realtor's on screen, we're going to draw this mask over top of him or pull it over top of him. We're going to go forward a bunch of frames, pull it in front of him again. And we're just going to make sure that that line is staying in front of him the entire time. It should be, but if it's not, so like here, it's going to clip off his foot. Let's just move this mask over just a little bit again. Perfect. We're going to attach this polygon mask to the media in 2 like this. And now if we look at our media out, which is our final footage, you can see we have our initial take and then the mask is pulling over right there. You can see him disappear and then it's showing the second take behind him. But the transition is seamless. Obviously, the issue right now is he is disappearing behind this mask. So we're going to have to bring him back over top of that footage. But I'm going to show you how to do that at the very end because I'm going to take advantage of the new magic mask in DaVinci Resolve 20. But one thing to notice, even with the iPhone settings locked, the footage is not perfectly consistent. So you can see that this mask is drawing a line through the footage. We don't want to see that. So we're going to take our soft edge, increase it quite a bit. The softer, the better, because that's going to hide that mask perfectly. And now we transitioned from take 1 to take 2. Our realtor disappears, and we'll add him back over top at the end of the video. Now let's take our third clip, drag it over top. We're going to put this by hitting 1 into the first viewer. So the clip starts around right there. We're going to add a polygon mask into empty space, draw it beside the box like so. We're going to go forward a bunch of frames. So it's something like that. Now he's on frame. Let's draw this. Let's move this box back over top of him. Let's go forward a bunch of frames, replace the entire frame at this point, and then scrub back, make sure that he's included inside of the entire polygon mask. So especially at the start here, let's just pull this over a little bit more. That looks good. Let's make sure that our polygon mask is plugged into our media in 3. You can see again, we have a seamless transition between the second take and the third take. I can't even see the mask line right now, but just for safe measure, I'm going to take my polygon and increase the soft edge by quite a bit. And now I'm going to repeat this process for the next take. So again, just repeat the same steps as before. I'm actually not going to connect this right now because I need to go over one more piece that I forgot to mention. So we're still going to work with this polygon mask, but we need to make sure that this mask is covering our next take completely, but not hiding our subject in the previous take. So for this mask right here, we're just going to drag it over top just like so. But you can see that that's going to come a little bit too far. So we're actually going to go back to around here. So now his hand is completely on there, and then his hand is still in on there. And sorry, one thing that you're really quickly going to have to change is once this initial clip, remember we placed a cut at the end of it, once that clip runs out, your screen is just going to go black. So a very quick fix to that is we're just going to replace the background input as a background, just like so. and then merge this on top of the background. It's the exact same thing. The only difference is now this background's continuously feeding it, and we're not going to result with a black screen at the end of this clip. So let's go back to this polygon masking. So again, if we go right here, we can see it's in front of his hand, but behind his, which is perfect. We're going to go forward a bunch of frames, move this line over, something like so. Go forward more frames, make sure that it's lined up properly over to that. And you can do as many keyframes as you might need. And now he's completely out of frame. So let's move it all the way over. That looks good. And let's just check the start because his shoulder would be clipped off right here. Let's add some space to that. So let's add our media for, let's plug it back in. Let's plug our polygon mask into that. So now both of our subjects are inside of the clip. Again, you can see this is one of those clips, mostly actually because his shadow is on the wall in the first take, but not the second. So we're gonna have to increase that soft edge just to hide that. But you have to be careful. You can't increase it too much because then the hand is gonna go transparent itself. So you just gotta finesse it a little bit and make sure that the subject is not transparent, but that the background is blended better. Now let's take our media in 5, which is this guy right here. Plug it in over top again, view it in the first monitor, find where it turns on, which is right there. Add a polygon mask. Let's keep it disconnected to start. Add a mask like so. Let's go forward a bunch of keyframes. There he is. Let's bring the mask over top to include him. Make sure he's included the whole time and then show the whole frame. And then just making sure that at the start of this, that it's not gonna hide the initial realtor, but I know he was standing here, so that's fine. Let's connect the polygon to the media in 5. And now this last transition here, if we play this through, is gonna be seamless. But again, there's probably a bit of a line. It's hard to see it right now. But for safe measure, let's just increase the soft edge quite a bit here. Now let's go back to the edit page. Let's play this back. So our realtor shows up at the start. It's a seamless start to the video. He's gonna disappear, but we're gonna fix that in a bit, but we can't see any transitions. The next realtor shows up. This is looking really smooth. I haven't seen a single cut yet. Let me know down in the comments if you have been able to spot the cuts. Again, it's smooth. The camera is moving. It's panning around the entire house. It's working. This is why we did a retake. He sort of stood there awkwardly for a second and a third. Oh, and it looks like, so this is a good problem to have because now I can show you how to fix it. So we go to a black screen, but that's because this clip actually ends right here when we cut it. So to fix that, we need to make sure that this next mask is fully onto the screen at this point. So let's go back a couple frames right there. So this means that the polygon mask needs to be right here at this point of the video. And now if we play this back, we shouldn't get this black box that's showing up on the side. It's seamless right into the end. Perfect. Now let's fix this initial issue that we had because everyone wants to know how to place someone on top of their original clone. So the easiest method, and I could have done this at the start, but you need to just duplicate that first clip. So I'm just going to duplicate the Fusion clip. I'm going to go into Fusion and I'm going to delete everything other than our original clip, just like so. Drag it onto media out. All right. And I'm only going to magic mask as much as I need to. So if I hide it right here for now, I can see that he disappears right there. So I'm going to cut this clip sort of like that and keep going forward, forward, forward. And I know he's still in frame here, 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 and then cut the clip there. So now we have a clip of just the realtor again, and we can use that to mask him out. I'm gonna duplicate this clip one more time because I'm gonna use one as just a little mask for his feet so that we can include the shadow a little bit easier. But for now, let's hide this bottom layer. Let's go into this top layer. And let's let DaVinci Resolve AI do its magic. I'm gonna go into the color page and use the new Magic Mask version 2, which is insanely good. So to start, let's add an alpha point, just like so. Let's go into our node. Let's go into the Magic Mask panel right here. And I'm just going to place a couple dots on him. Currently, I'm still on the first beta version. I have not upgraded yet. And my Magic Mask is only slow when I'm adding the dots. As soon as the dots are added, it speeds up a lot, but obviously this is just in the beta model, so this is gonna be improved. Let's select this icon right here to see what it has selected, and it's done a pretty good job. I'm just gonna add another point on his arm right there. Let's turn off the highlight, or let's keep it on, and let's track forwards and backwards. So it's tracking him, tracking him, tracking him. And notice that I have not connected it to the alpha out point already, because if you connect it before tracking, it has to simulate what's going to be behind him as it's doing the tracking. It actually makes the tracking significantly slower. So it's always better to do your track before connecting it to the alpha out point. Let's connect this like so, and let's turn off the highlight. And again, he's walking in front of himself. It looks great. I'm going to add a bit of a soft edge just to smooth that out a little bit. His feet are tracked into place, but obviously you can see that his feet are something that looks really unnatural because it's masking his feet, but it's not including the shadow. So we're going to fix that. But to start, let's just make sure we fix this edge to make sure it looks a little bit smoother. So let's increase the blur radius just a little bit, just like so. And that's going to give us a clean enough edge to work with. Now let's turn this layer off. Let's go back into our clip, and we're just going to mask around his feet really fast. It's going to be really simple, just so that we can include some of that shadow. So I'm actually just going to use an ellipse mask. So let's add an ellipse mask. Let's place it around his feet, something just like so. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to capture his whole shadow, just enough so that it looks natural. And I'm going to use the center XY to keyframe that around. So let's hit keyframe. Let's go forward a bunch of frames, make sure that more so just the bottom of his feet are in. We don't need to worry about what's up here because we're just worried about the shadow right now. Let's go forward again, move this over so it's capturing the shadow, move this over, and you get the process. We're just covering his feet with this ellipse the entire time. So we're gonna scrub through, make sure that we're getting a healthy amount of his shadow inside of the ellipse. So here I might actually drag it a little bit more on this side, because if his toe goes out, that's not the biggest issue in the world, because remember, his feet are already masked. We're just worried about capturing the shadow. Let's go back a little bit, add another one like so. Okay, now we're gonna increase the soft edge on that, and we're gonna plug that into media 1. So now it's just masking his feet. Let's increase the soft edge actually just a little bit more. And now if we play this back, include our magic mask and watch this, you can see he's going to be masked and his shadows are going to be in the next shot. See, you can see his shadows. It looks great. He's in the shot. It looks natural. All right, and now we want to make sure that this video loops seamlessly. And to make this a little bit easier on my computer and just my own sanity, I'm going to first render this clip, and then I'm going to go work on the loop afterwards. So you can render this just as you'd render any other clip. Just go into the delivery page, render it out. I'm going to import my rendered clip just like so. Now let's take our rendered clip and let's drag it onto our timeline. We can delete everything else for the meantime. We don't need to worry about that. To do this loop, it's actually super easy. So what you're going to want to do is you want the subject to start talking right at the start of the clip. So I'm going to place a cut mark right at the start of the clip, just like so. Now I'm going to bring that to the start. So this is now the start of the clip. But this, what we cut, is a seamless cut towards the start of this clip. So if we loop this, if I play it from here, the video is going to play seamlessly, right? So we just need to blend into this little part of the clip now instead of worrying about how to blend this start with this end, if that makes sense. We're going to drag this over top, and we're just going to line this up the same as we did with the rest of this effect. So I'm going to turn the opacity down. I'm going to scrub through until all my lines perfectly match and until that ghosting is completely gone, which is right there. And now what we need to make sure of is our realtor shows up right here. So we know at this point in time, let me just show you here, the realtor shows up right there. So we need to make sure that the frame is at full opacity at that point. So the only thing that we're going to do to blend this is I'm just going to turn the opacity up, I'm going to increase this feather right here. So now this is the first take, and now, oh, it looks like we started a little bit too early. So he's walking out of frame right here. So we need to wait till he's out of frame right there. Oh, something like so right there. And then he's in frame there. So let's make sure we're feathered in between those two spots. All right, and now if we play this back, there's a perfect blend between the two. And a reminder that this loop right here, or this cut, sorry, is the perfect replica of the start of the clip. So if we play this back, so this is the end of the video now, and we have loop turned on. He's gonna walk out of frame, it's gonna fade into the new clip, and then he's gonna show up, and it's going to be that perfect cut and start right over at the start of the clip. All of our cloning looks great, the video is awesome. I hope that this is going to turn into the next viral trend. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support. I can't believe how fast the channel is growing. This effect was really fun to create. It's really fun to actually think of something original and new. I have not seen a single video doing this exact effect by anyone else before. I've seen some people use like smaller dollies or smaller sliders and stuff, but not everyone owns those. I'd say that the majority of my audience, at least, and the majority of videographers own some type of gimbal, so they'd be able to do this effect. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any recommendations for future videos, let me know down below in the comments, or of what you want to learn when it comes to video production or visual effects. Yeah, I think that's all. Till next time.